Welcome to Construction Genius, and today is a solo episode on building a high-performance culture, a high-performance team, having a high-performance company. You're going to like it. We get into it. Enjoy it. Thank you for listening today.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership.
Welcome to Construction Genius. Today we're going to talk about building a high-performance culture, and I want to frame it in this way. Ballers ball. You know, when you're a kid and you used to go out and play basketball with your friends, and a guy would walk on the court and he would start to play, and immediately you knew he was a baller. He could score, he could defend, he could rebound. He was a straight baller. And as a result of that, his team was more likely to win than any other team that was playing on the court that day. You can say, I've got next, but that guy would be staying on for a long period of time. It's that concept of baller's ball that I want to explore today in the episode. And I think it's really important because we live in a culture where high performance is not necessarily valued by everyone. And we make priority over things other than high performance. And so today I'm going to talk about building that high performance culture. I'm going to describe what it is and why it's important. Then we're going to talk about who's going to be in that performance culture and who's not, who you should be looking for and who disqualifies themselves from that. And then how do you manage a high performance culture? And I want to give you permission as the leader of your construction company to insist on a culture of high performance. And you may say, Eric, I don't need your permission. And you are 100% right, you don't. But I want you to understand that though the pressures from the culture around us may seek to diminish the importance of performance, you know in your heart, and the very best people know in their hearts, that the whole purpose of a business is to perform at a high level for the benefit of the owners, the employees, the customers, and the community as a whole. So let's spend some time exploring that here today. What is a high-performance culture? It is a company of individuals relentlessly focused on solving problems and adding value for your customers. And this is really important. The whole focus of your business in construction is finding, bidding, winning, planning, building, and getting paid for the work that you do. Building those projects for the right clients in the right locations with the right margins. And you want to be able to do this within the parameters of speed, cost, and quality that you've committed to on your contracts. And what you're looking for is that group of individuals who are willing to come together as a team in a challenging environment, and because of their integrity, their technical expertise, and their sheer hard work, they're able to deliver that value for your clients. Nothing else matters. When you're bringing people into your organization, when you're developing people through your organization, ask this question: will he or she help us to build construction projects profitably? When you're making decisions, use that same framework. Will this help us to build construction projects profitably? That's all that matters in your business. And the reason why this is important is because this is what will help you to fulfill the purpose of your business, which is to find and keep customers and to make money on every construction project that you build. With this framework, it will help you to focus on hiring the right people and putting them in the right positions. If you have a high-performance culture, it will attract the right people to your organization. And if you are effective at articulating that and communicating it and living it out, then those high-performance people will stick with you throughout the scope and the span of your company's lifetime. This kind of approach will create urgency and high standards that filter out the paycheck picker-uppers. We're going to talk about those guys and gals in a minute here. And you should not be ashamed or reluctant to insist on a high-performance culture. So now let's talk about who's in and who's not in this high-performance culture. Let me tell you about the types of people who are in. I want you to imagine a big ship for a moment, and your company is a ship, and it's setting out on a sea voyage, a voyage across the sea. How do you spell sea? It's really easy. S-E-A. So think about your company as a ship on the sea, and you're looking for people who have skill, who have a tremendous amount of effort, and have the right attitude. S-E-A. Skill, effort, attitude. Let's dive into that. If you're going to have a high-performance culture, the people that work for you and work with you must have a high degree of technical skill. They must have the technical skill necessary for the job that they're in right now. They need a hunger to continue to build their technical skills for how work is going to be done in the future. And they also need to understand how their technical skills fit in across disciplines in your organization and meld and merge with other technical skills. So you do need people who have a high degree of technical skill and understanding. You also need folks who have people skills. And some of the most important people skills in construction are having difficult conversations, building high-performing teams, running effective meetings. These are absolutely essential. And so if you're going to have a high-performing culture, you must insist on people who have either these skills, both technical and people already, or who have the capacity and the desire and the will to get those skills and to develop them over time. And that leads us then to effort. If you're going to have a high-performing culture, you must have people who have a high degree of intensity. Let me give you an example. Monday morning, 6:30 or 7 o'clock, your project managers are already working. Your guys are out on the site working. Your PMs and your PEs are already in the seat getting stuff done for that week. There's high intensity, but there's also correct focus. So they're not just working hard, but they're working with focus on the most important priorities. They're not putting off those difficult conversations. They're grinding through the tough estimate. They're making sure that they pick up the phone and contact former clients who may have new project opportunities. They're taking time out of their day job, if they're in an executive role, to put on their executive hat and give full attention and full focus to those executive meetings. So they have high intensity and correct focus, but they're also team-oriented. And that's the one thing that you have to keep in mind with construction, is that it's a team sport. And yes, there's unique talents and skills that certain individuals have, but in order to thrive in a construction company, you must be willing to collaborate with others. So they have to have that kind of effort, high intensity, correct focus, and team orientation. And then they must have the right attitude. They must have skill, they must have effort, and then the right attitude. And that attitude must be consistent. And let me give you 3 ways that that attitude should be demonstrated. First, in initiative. Initiative. They're willing to complete their tasks and then ask, what's next and how can I help? They're always looking to help others after having taken care of their own business. In light of that skill development that we've talked about, once they've mastered a task, they're then looking for the next task to learn, the next area of their job to become comfortable with. They're always looking to fill up their role and responsibility with high performance across the full spectrum of that role and responsibility, and then move on to another aspect of learning their craft as a leader or as a construction professional. Those are the types of people you want to be looking for. And then, when it comes to problems, they're not conflict averse, but they're taking the initiative to see the problem and go towards it. They go towards the fire, not away from the fire. So they're taking that initiative of completing tasks, mastering tasks, and dealing with issues. Then they're coachable. That's the attitude they have. They want to learn rather than want to excuse. When a mistake that they make is brought up, they immediately take accountability for that. They own it and they look to fix it. They take time outside of work to put in the effort necessary. Think about it from a coachable perspective. I know that in my years of coaching sports, the kids who make the most progress are not the kids who just come to practice and try hard during practice, but the ones who put in extra effort outside of practice. You know that, I know that. That's the type of person that you're looking for in your business. They're coachable and they're taking time outside of work to put in effort. And I mentioned accountable, and that's one of the keys there. They are accountable. They are prepared for every day as opposed to just showing up. They are willing to answer for the quality of the work that they are responsible for. They're willing to admit when they've made a mistake. They're the guys and gals willing to have the difficult conversations, not hoping that you take on the difficult conversations. So these are the types of people that you want in your company. Those with skill, those with effort, and those with the right attitude. And in terms of skill, they're always increasing in their technical and people skills. They're always exhibiting a high effort and a consistent attitude. That's what you're looking for. You don't want the manics, right? The guys and gals who come in on Monday all pumped up, and by Wednesday they're deflated. You just want those folks who are there consistently performing at a high level. So who's not appropriate for this high performance culture? Well, there's a bucket of people that I call the paycheck picker-uppers. They're addicted to the paycheck. In this way, all they're thinking about is when the next paycheck's coming in. And of course, you should compensate your people fairly and generously for the work that they put in. But the high performers are not just thinking about the paycheck. They're thinking about their craft. And there's 3 types of paycheck picker-uppers. There's the old school paycheck picker-uppers. There's the daddy's boys. And then there's the entitled paycheck picker-uppers. Let me talk about those. First is the old school paycheck picker-uppers. They've been around for many, many years, and yes, they've built projects that are successful, but maybe they're on the back end of their career, and it's kind of my way or the highway with these types of people. They don't want to learn new technologies. They hoard information, and they're playing out the string. Maybe you have a senior project manager or even someone in an executive role who's like that, or a superintendent or a foreman who's reluctant to develop the next generation. These paycheck picker-uppers, they shouldn't be long-term in your company. Then there's the daddy's boys. Who are the daddy's boys? Be honest, there's people in your organization who are there not because of the skill that they have or the intensity of the effort that they make, but because of the relationships they have with someone in authority, even yourself. They could be your own children. And if your children are in your business, assume that you have your kid goggles on. You know what it's like, right? When you watch sports and kids are playing. Here in America, we're obsessed with it. And you listen to parents talk about their children and they think they're going to become professional athletes. And most of them are completely deluded. And that's what happens with us in our lives. I know it happens with me with my kids. I have my dad goggles on. I see them a particular way, and it's easy for me to miss their flaws and where they fall short. Assume that you have your kid goggles on. When it comes to your kids in the business, you probably think that your son and daughter are better than they actually are. So what you want to do is bring in outside help to evaluate them and watch carefully how they interact with people in your company. Are they respectful or are they entitled? And what I would encourage you to do is what many of the great construction companies do with family members. It's not to send family members away permanently and never have them in your business, but rather it is to give them the opportunity to go work for other companies and prove themselves. And when they start back in your company, start them at the bottom and have them work their way through. Or even better, when they're kids in high school, bring them into your business and just have them sweep floors and clean the bathrooms and pick up trash and do what's ever necessary. It gives them the right perspective on work and the right perspective on the value and the privilege of working in your organization. Hey, this is Eric, and as you're thinking about high performance, you're probably thinking about how to develop your leaders, those guys and gals who are ballers. And again, they may be technically skilled, but they can struggle when they get into leadership roles with making the shift from building projects to building teams of people. And that's why I've created The Shift, which is a hands-on, very practical, no BS, online leadership development course for construction professionals. And to make that shift from project builder to people leader, you must master communication, handling difficult conversations, leading your team to quick, practical solutions, fostering the environment of high performance that we've been talking about today. And you're also going to learn in The Shift how to manage your time, energy, and calendar effectively. So if you want to learn more about The Shift, go to www.theshift.constructiongenius.com. What a great URL. The URL will be in the show notes, so you can click on it. There's a killer deal right now for the program. It will be for a limited time, and it's only $197 per seat. And if you sign up 5 or more people for the course, I will do a 1-hour Zoom question and answers for all the participants after you have completed the course. So it's $197 a seat. I think that's a killer deal. In fact, I know it's a killer deal, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. So if you don't see the value from the course, if you don't get what you want from it, just let me know and I will send you your money back right away with no questions asked and a smiley face. All right, let's go back to the solo episode talking about how to build that high-performance culture. So you've got the paycheck picker-uppers, the old school folks, the daddy's boys, and then the entitled. The entitled people are the ones who are just in it for themselves. What's in it for me? They have this idea, I want it all and I want it now. They're benefits and pay focused instead of delivering results. They do the bare minimum. They're the last to arrive. They're the first to leave. They don't push through on a Wednesday night to get a bid out, but they've always got somewhere else to go. I'll say this and it'll ruffle a few feathers. They take their full paternal leave. I remember when I had my first kid, obviously I had my own business, so I didn't have any other choice, but we had the kid on a Wednesday, and on Thursday, I was back to work, right? And my wife had to grind through some challenging days. We had good support from our family and things like that, but these weeks and weeks of paternal leave that people take. I know that they take them now because they're given to them by the state, but really, is that necessary? There's other folks who bring their politics, whether right or left, to work and their personal beliefs in a way that hinders relationships. It doesn't mean that people can't be authentic at work, but we need to grow up, right? We're not in high school anymore. People have different opinions and different beliefs, whether they're religious beliefs or political beliefs. And we have to be able to, in business, understand that this is a team that we're on. It's more like an athletic team than it is a village hall, so to speak, where we're going to debate our ideas. We're here to do one thing, and that's build projects profitably. And so bring your whole self to work by all means, but don't bring your politics and religion to work in such a way that it's going to hinder your relationships with other people. Then there's the people who are overly obsessed with their families. And work-life balance, whatever that means, and however you define it, is important. But I know this one company, and it really strikes me. Their dad worked 5 days a week, full-time. And he worked on Saturdays and even on Sundays. He made a point, though, of having dinner with them on a regular basis. And they don't remember him not being there. They remember his incredible work ethic and his commitment to the company that he worked for and for providing for his family. And that's what stuck with them. And very much we're in a culture now where, we've got to spend lots of time with our kids. And I think we need to reevaluate that. Every person obviously has to make their own decisions, but your kids don't need you hovering around them 24 hours a day. And you can find a lot of meaning and fulfillment. And you can actually be a good example to your children by the amount of intensity that you bring to work. Now, be fully present with them when you are with them, but don't think that you have to spend all day, every day with your kids. And then in terms of the entitled folks, there's the people who are focused on equity as opposed to equality. And let me tell you what that means. Equity focuses on a fair outcome for all, whereas equality focuses on the same opportunity for all. Your company should be a place of equality, but it cannot be a place of equity, because in a business, there cannot be fair outcomes for all, in the sense that an outcome is driven by a person's performance, by what they do as an individual, and individuals are different in terms of their abilities, in terms of their effort, in terms of their attitude. And so the outcomes that occur from their efforts are going to be different. Equity is an illusion in a high-performance culture. Equality is a requirement. You give the same opportunity to all, the same resources to all, but the outcomes will not all be the same. So, we've talked about what a high-performance culture is and why it's important, who's in it and who's not. And now let's touch on how you manage this high-performance culture. The first thing, you spread your net when you're hiring. So diversity is excellent. You're looking for that diversity of insight and talent and skill. And so you start in the high schools perhaps, or at colleges. I'll give you a little shout out here. We have 5 kids and we've homeschooled all 5 of them. And if you're trying to get young people who are not, how shall I say this, brainwashed by the culture that we live in, then you might get to know homeschool groups. And a pushback to that are, well, homeschoolers are weird, right? They haven't been socialized by the education system. But my pushback to that is this: if the parents are weird, then the kids will probably be weird. If the parents are relatively normal, the kids will be relatively normal. And a lot of these homeschoolers, what they've learned over the years is how to take initiative by themselves without someone standing over them in a regimented environment. And if you can pick those kids out, they are straight ballers. And their minds are not polluted by the worst parts of our culture that breed that sense of entitlement in many young men and women. In fact, I want to say this about our generations upcoming. I think the Zoomers are a little bit different than the millennials. I think the Zoomers are more like us Gen Xers, right? I'm a Gen Xer. I'm in my 50s. And I don't think they have that same sense of entitlement as the millennials. That's just my anecdotal sense based on the young people that I know. And I think there's a lot of young people out there who you can find, whether in high schools or in colleges, that can have a tremendous positive impact in your business. And they're not necessarily looking to go to a 4-year college. They're looking to get going. And you know in construction that if you can take a nice diamond that might be in the rough, you can polish them and you can develop them over time. And with that right attitude and effort that we've talked about, they can make a tremendous positive impact. So you must give them mentorship as you bring them in, particularly for talented people who don't look like other folks in your company, right? So get that diversity of talent, which may mean you have people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, men, women, whatever the case is, you're all good with that. It's true diversity of talent that you're looking for. And you put them into the company and maybe it's kind of a trial by fire, but they need those mentors, those men and women who can guide them through the business. And so you need to find men and women who aren't tripping over things like ethnicity or gender and are able to work with a diverse group of people, helping them to make the contribution in your organization. But then you're looking for people who are not themselves, the employees who are not focused on their own, individual uniqueness, but they're really focused on bringing their whole self to the company on a daily basis and giving their best effort. And so you're always looking to hire and promote from merit, ignoring arbitrary and narrow identity-based decisions. You set clear goals and criteria for success. You allow people to understand what their role and responsibility is and how they can perform at a high level in that role and responsibility. And then you promote them and you bonus them and you incentivize them based on that alone. Then you move fast. And here's a great question to ask. It comes from Elon Musk, but it's really great. What have you done this week? It's perfect for construction because it's schedule-driven, construction is. And what you're really looking to do is make progress every week. And whether that's project-based, whether it's based in the relationships that people have with others, you're looking for progress every week. So for instance, let's say there's an issue on a job. And you're asking that question, what have you done this week to deal with that issue? The answer you're looking for is not, I've sent an email or I've sent a text, but I drove out to the job site and I got a meeting with the sub, with the owner, with the supplier, and we figured out the schedule issue that we had. That's what you're looking for. Because you want folks who can fix issues, who are able to identify bottlenecks in each project they're working on and meet directly with the team to solve those bottlenecks. And of course, as a sub, you may not have as much control as a GC, so there's limits to what you can do to move things forward, but you're always looking to have people fixing issues, getting stuff done every week, moving fast. So for instance, let's say you're working with an estimator. You can ask them, how have you sharpened your pencil this week? How can you get creative in order to be able to win that particular project? Once we get it over to we win it and get it over to the project management, they can figure out how we're going to increase our profit margins. But what can you do this week to move forward, to fix issues, and to win more work? And then you want to disallow silos. You must work very hard on bringing people together. Don't let the general superintendent and the area manager get into a beef. Okay? Look at the processes in your organization that are perpetuating and creating those silos and seek to smash those processes and do better as far as that's concerned. All right, so seek diversity of talent, move fast, fix issues, and disallow silos. And as we're talking about this high-performance culture, these objections or these fears may be coming up. What about work-life balance? How do we balance high-performance culture with an environment that's healthy? How do we deal with government requirements in terms of HR issues? How do we deal with people who are brought up in our culture of diversity and equity and inclusion that is in many ways anti-human and keeps us from really building those high-performance cultures? Well, I think it starts at the top. It starts with you, the construction company owner who is considering what we're talking about here today about building that high-performance culture. You want to open your doors to every single person in the labor pool, every single talented person who's willing to come in and make a contribution. And if you're smart, all you care about is winning. All you care about is building projects profitably, taking care of customers, taking care of your employees, having a long-term legacy. And so you're opening your doors to everyone. It doesn't matter what color skin they have. It doesn't matter if they're male or female. It doesn't matter their political persuasions. It just matters that they can make a contribution to your company and perform at a high level. And I've attempted to outline in today's podcast what that looks like. Take Netflix as an example. They hire people who are not only good at what they do, but they're good at working together. They give employees the right information and freedom to make decisions themselves. They try and build a place where employees can do the best work of their lives. They create a culture by hiring people who are willing to share learnings throughout the organization. They don't look at their company as a family. They look at it as a sports team. And that high-performance mentality permeates all of their operations. And you can contrast that with someone like Boeing, who's gone through a tremendous amount of issues, but they've really started to hone back in to high performance by asking this simple question: what I'm doing today, what we're doing today, how we're operating as a company, does this help us to build airplanes? So they're evaluating and eliminating legacy processes that add complexity without value. And they focus in on people who know how to build things that have high integrity, that work hard and have technical expertise. So if you're going to build a high-performance culture, think back to what we've talked about here today. What is that high-performance culture? Why is it important? Who's in? Who's not? Start identifying your paycheck picker-uppers and do what you can to move them down the line. And then make those steps forward in your business. As you move fast, as you fix issues, as you disallow silos, and as you open your doors to anyone who wants to come in and contribute. So your next steps: define your culture. Ask, are we really high performing? Be honest. And then make those steps forward that we've outlined. And again, going back to that analogy I used at the beginning about the guy who walks onto the playground basketball court, and you can just tell as soon as he starts playing, he's a straight baller. That's what you're looking for. Ballers who ball. All right. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and feel free to share it with other people who you think will benefit from it. Really appreciate you listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Hey, this is Eric. Thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Share it with other people. Feel free to give Construction Genius a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll catch you on your next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.